present day and Manchester and black people who live in Manchester, and the idea for some people that I've spoken to is an idea that they're very dislocated from their history and their cultural heritage. And sometimes they might feeling like there's nothing out there that shows or reflects positivity about them and their achievements. And I just wondered whether you think that all the things that we've been talking about, what relevance that might play today, or whether you might be able to, this is something that you think could be brought out to young people, for instance.
I think if you were to place it in context, it's very, very important to place things in context. And looking at something like this compared to a PlayStation 2, many young people will be looking at, what's this about? But then if you find a way to explain it, like I mentioned before, the mobile phone, to put it in a contemporary context and say, this is how we used to do these things before. Remember, most people's perceptions of black culture are restricted to slavery and restricted to colonialism. And that is a very, very small part of the continuum of African traditional culture. So many of the people I used to teach adult classes here as well. So people were coming there, the perceptions were we were slaves and there's nothing going on before that. 2007, the anniversary of the abolition bill and law, not abolition, because that was going on as late as 1922 in Sierra Leone. The 2007 to me represents a dangerous time, because if like I said, I go internationally and nationally up and down this country asking young people, I say, what did you learn about yourself in school? And I said, we were slaves. I said, and? We were slaves. That's all they're coming away with a lot of the time. Even though as taxpayers and the national curriculum guidelines saying that people's cultural identity should be developed so that they can challenge discrimination and stereotyping. So I don't see schools delivering on that. But that's another thing. But what happens is, if you were to actually ask these young people, what do you know beyond? This is a breaking through. This is a breaking through. There's to me, there's just like a wall being built called slavery and colonialism. This kind of understanding will allow them to break through. Whether they feel good about these things will be determined by the context under which they're learning them. Many youngsters now who, I say this to you now, that I teach around in London quite a bit. I go into a classroom, I say an Igbo name or a Yoruba name. I say, oh, you're Igbo. And they'll go like, And I say, oh, which part of Igbo are you from? I don't know. I said, and one girl, I remember, because I said, oh, Kedu. She said, don't talk that to me, don't talk that to me. The French children do that. The Pakistani children do it. The Kosovan children do it. I don't know any other groups who so disclaim their language and cultural traditions as Africans. And that's because we've been subject to a process called colonization. And that's been a long time as well. Please remember this. Arabs arrived using Islam over 1,400 years ago. And have been barrage. That barrage is beginning. And then later, 400 years ago, slavery starts from the Europeans. Then, of course, we have the colonization process. The map of Africa you see divided, and you look north of Africa, you'll see Europe. The European nations in 1884 gathered, in 1885 signed a treaty to divide the big African cake, as they call it. The mindsets since then have been conducive to that process. And William Wilberforce was not an emancipator. He was a strategist. He was a colonialist. And that's what his main drive was, to stop slavery, which had lost its economic power at that point. He said, instead of making people slaves away from home, making them slaves at home. So he said, this is my Uncle William. I'm even named William. Uncle William. This is my white ancestor. This is what he's doing to my black ancestors. So I got to get an understanding of this. And what does it do? Use strategies like this as a breaking through that nonsense of slavery and colonialism, to get these young people, to get adults, to actually know they had something that a heritage to be proud of. Heritage says her, its age, the age of it in her. We also need to be looking at the role of women in this process as well. You see men standing here. We need the women there and the role of women and the positivities that these cultures had, bypassing all the nonsense. I'm sorry to rant like this. Africa had twin towers like New York, male institutions and female institutions, all of them expressed. When the Arabs came in, when the Europeans came in, they only flew the plane into the female institution and knocked that down, and left the male institutions in, disjointed, disorientated, carrying on like an Igbo culture. How can a guy claim he's a Christian and be practicing polygamy? But what they did, the colonizers allowed them to keep certain practices that the men thought were in their interest. So all these contradictions are arising, but we have to be analysing and find out where they come from and how they're practiced now. This is a fantastic program you're doing.
Thank you very much. Furthermore, you see, when you say you see many Africans today disclaiming or quite unknowledgeable of these facts, I will boldly say those that disclaim here in the West are hypocrites. Come to Africa when we are celebrating just the festival of Shango. Christian and Muslim will forget their Bibles and Quran and participate, because this is an ancestor. It's not imposed on anybody. Nobody's campaign to come and be a believer, but they all know that they are all believers. Come to Osun Festival. When we are doing Osun Festival, UNESCO has even taken over that now from us, as I was telling you yesterday. Come and see millions of people, black. You will see a lot of them going home when they are doing this festival. But as soon as they come here, they dismiss it. Many for immigration purposes, many for popularity purposes, many. But when they want, today I'm saying it in front of camera, there are many Christian reverend fathers even whose parents are priests and priestesses in the shrine. You understand me?
Sure.
That's why we don't have religious conflict in Africa, because we are still part and parcel of one another.
Yeah, yeah.
How can I be fighting my son now who claim to be a Christian or a Muslim? You understand me? This is how he feels himself can be mixed with the population today. I told you I was forced to have the little Western education, which is beneficial to me today. My colleagues, my contemporaries, who are still custodians like this, cannot speak Western language. So when people say, I don't want to hear about it, I said, no, Mr. B was saying, don't speak that language to my son. When they get home, when they go to their festival in Nigeria, or in any part of Africa, they are going to be part of this. What we are trying to do here is for people not to see this religion and practice as fetish or devilish or wicked or bad. That's why we support your program here today.
And it's like even extending the point that Paul was saying in terms of how Africa and Africans are being portrayed, you know, because like everybody, like I said yesterday as well, everybody's got geographical location. You can talk about Asian, you can talk about European, and when it comes to us, it's just black. So there's not even an identity, you understand? And that causes problems as well, because that just adds to the sense of dislocation. There's no, what do you mean black and everybody else is referred to geographically. So these are the things what add to the kind of isolation. And you know, when you're talking about Africa, everybody wants nothing to do with Africa, because as far as they're concerned, it's starving children and Bob Geldof. That's what they know about Africa.